Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of disability. And that means sometimes we're going to be talking to individuals who grew up with a difference or a challenge. We're going to be talking to parents who have or are raising kids with different abilities. And we're going to be talking to a lot of people that support this community. It might be people in education, in healthcare, and in many nonprofits working all around the nation. Today is one of my favorite episodes, which is a nonprofit spotlight episode. I think you're going to love meeting the folks that are affiliated with an organization that has been a pillar of disability advocacy in my hometown, right in my backyard here in Louisville, Kentucky, and that is Kosair for Kids. I'm going to start with welcoming Chris to the show. Chris, tell us a little bit about Kosair for Kids and about the group of people you've brought to chat with us today.
Well, Jim, we're grateful for you to give us this megaphone to talk about the wonderful things that our mission addresses and the wonderful families that we partner with and our organizations that do all the collaboration with us to make sure that the mission that we've been a part of for 103 years continues today. We were formed 103 years ago as Kosair Charities Committee, Inc., and a lot of people know us from that name or the old Kosair Crippled Children Hospital on Eastern Parkway, which is where Joseph and I work still today. But today, Kosair for Kids is still on this mission to help all children live life to the fullest. And we do that through providing financial support for medical bills that families can't afford, therapies, equipment, or treatments, as well as education, social services, child advocacy, and medical research. We started 103 years ago when a group of Kosair Shriners knew that an orthopedic children's hospital was needed in Louisville, Kentucky, and there was not going to be one built under the Shriners moniker. Well, they decided to fundraise on their own and create Kosair Charities Committee, Inc. They did an outreach, and a doctor named Barnett Owen, who was here in Louisville, they searched around the state to try to find a child that really needed the help. They found a little boy named Tommy from Appalachia. He was 12 years old, had never walked without the aid of crutches. He had been stricken with infantile paralysis, which would later be called polio. And after about 6 months of therapies and surgery, they had a big party in August of 1923, and the newspaper reports say 1,000 people showed up. Tommy walked across that stage that night without the aid of crutches. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, and the fundraising began. And the mission was already started, continued. 3 years later, in 1926, we opened this building as the Kosair Crippled Children Hospital. People from all across Kentucky and then the 10 counties that surround Metro Louisville in Indiana brought their children here free of charge. We made a big name for ourselves during the fight against polio. In fact, one of our board members, Patrick Miller, was a child here during that time. He didn't have polio. He was born with bilateral clubfoot. And the work that was done with him here allowed him to go on and have a very successful life and a construction career. Through the years, you may have heard about our name on different hospitals. Today, we have our name on several NICUs tied to the Baptist Health Group in Kentucky and in southern Indiana. But while we have transformed our name, we have not changed our mission. We still are the safety net for families who find themselves in a situation that no one really wishes upon themselves. But we're here for them through those pillars that you talked about, and we're grateful to be a part of their lives. Today with us, Joseph Fons is our Senior Grants Director, and I'll let him describe what he does, but he's an amazing guy on our team who really directs these grant proposals that go to organizations we collaborate with, as well as the families. And then we have an all-star with us, and that is Whitney Stevens. She is the mother of Kosair kid Elliot, who is an incredible little boy, the youngest patient ever at the Kosair for Kids Pediatric Neuro Recovery Center, who just did something that was similar to what Tommy did all those years ago. He walked across the floor, something that doctors said he would never do in front of a packed house at our annual pie auction. But Jim, we can't thank you enough for letting us be here and be a part of your podcast.
Well, thanks for that great intro, Chris. And for those of you listening, we know you're really busy and you have a lot of choices when it comes to your time. So thanks for tuning in today. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. I love the passion hearing Chris talk about the mission. Before we jump into talking about this path, we always like to get to know our guests. If you've heard episodes before, you know we call it the Fast Forward. It's brought to us by our friends at Reliable Tech Help. So if you have tech needs, reach out to them, 502-797-7399. My first question will go round robin style, starting with Joseph. What is your favorite food?
Chicken wings. Good chicken
Okay.
wings.
Okay. Whitney, how about you?
My favorite is going to be meatloaf.
Meatloaf, cuts.
Meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
And Chris,
Sushi, and I make my own sushi. So
there you go. Okay. I think that's a first I've had that reply. Okay, if we looked at your playlist, what kind of music would we find? We'll stay with Chris.
the end of the year, I did the Spotify deal, and I listened to the Rolling Stones for about an hour and a half every night. I work out every night, and I'm in the top 0.3% of listeners for Rolling Stones. So it said my age was 79, but I'm a huge fan of the Rolling Stones.
Okay, Wendy, how about you? Music. I mean,
I
Whitney, sorry.
am a 90s girl, 80s, 90s girl. I would say that I'm going to say one of my top people that I listen to is going to be like Fleetwood Mac.
Okay. And Joseph?
So I would say that a lot of what I listen to is more rap, hip hop, R&B, but do love Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and my Spotify age was 82. So I guess the numbers don't lie.
I love it. Okay, what are you enjoying these days? And I'll give you a choice: TV show, streaming show, great movie you've seen, a book you're reading. We'll stay with you, Joseph.
So Stranger Things is on the front of my mind. They just wrapped up the series here last week, and I've been totally consumed by it.
Awesome. Whitney.
I am watching a limited series right now. It's called The Black Rabbit, and it is right up my alley.
Awesome. Chris.
I just started watching the Jack Ryan series that ended a couple of years ago, but I would highly recommend anyone who has access to Amazon to check out Corner Gas, which was a Canadian sitcom for about 10 years. It was kind of like Friends, based around a tiny little gas station in Saskatchewan.
Oh, I love it. Okay, and then Chris, we'll stay with you. What about a place, if we could just whisk you off now from our current winter weather to some location around the world, what would it be?
I've always wanted to see a professional baseball game in Japan. Huge Dodger fan, so if I couldn't do that, I'd love to spend a whole season in LA watching Dodger games.
There you go. Okay, Whitney, how about you?
I would say probably Belize. I went
Okay,
there before and it was absolutely, I loved the food there and I love the scenery. So I'd probably say Belize.
okay, and Joseph.
So I'm already dreading. I know as soon as we get finished here, I'm going to regret my answer, but I'm going to go with Maui in Hawaii. So since you put me on the spot.
I love it. Okay, fantastic. Well, all kinds of things we could talk about, but I wanted to begin with where the journey begins for a lot of parents who are raising a kid who has challenges, differences, disabilities, and that's kind of acceptance. I think there's a really, most people in this world have heard of the written piece, A Trip to Holland, where you're on the plane and you're getting ready to take a vacation to Holland and they come over the loudspeaker and they say, "Welcome to Italy." And Italy is not where you thought you were going, and you have to kind of adjust. Whitney, you've obviously got the firsthand experience with Elliot. And then tell us about any background you had prior to him in the world of disability. And what was it like knowing that you were going to be on a different path with raising a kid who had extra challenges?
So again, I had a handicapped brother. My mom adopted him whenever I was 6 years old and he was seven. And he was fully handicapped. His brain basically never grew past a 6 month old baby.
Mm.
And that was very challenging growing up in it. The home of the innocents played a massive part in my brother and his care. And then also like Kosair for kids, especially the hospital that they used to have was huge. The Ronald McDonald House. I knew a lot of those kind of things. I didn't know a lot of the doctors or any of the ins and outs, but we had physical therapy in our home every day as far as I can remember. I don't know if it was actually every day. Um, Also, just the what my mom had to go through raising a child that she did not have that was handicapped. He was my stepdad's biological child, but my mom, like I said, took on custody of him, and me and my mom raised him. And it was quite challenging. I think growing up in that created a lot of rebelling towards it. Whenever I was able to be out on my own and really, because I felt locked down a lot whenever I was a kid with that. So when I found out that I was going to have a child that was going to need special care, that was going to be handicapped, I honestly created a lot of fear in my mind for the beginning of it. Not until I would say that he was actually born did I create this. I don't know what it was inside of me, but I just felt like that my whole demeanor of that changed. And the whole entire fear of that, I feel like kind of lifted from me. And I just knew that if I wasn't strong, then I wasn't going to be able to be what I needed for him. And so that's where I carried all my strength is that I knew that I had to be the one that was his voice and that he didn't have that. And so that really pushed me to be everything that I am right now as far as for my son. So that's the best way I can sum that up in about a 2 second
No, that was pretty good.
sentence.
Let me ask you this for parents who might be listening who are early on in the journey, and early on it can be really overwhelming to think of all the things your kid may never do and all you see is challenges. What advice would you have for parents as they're kind of navigating through those really real emotions that come in the beginning?
Take one. So it's a ladder. Life is a ladder. You're going to go through the steps of that ladder each and every time, every day, every month, every year, and just take one at a time and try not to look at so far ahead that you cannot plan out because nothing is going to go the way that you have it in your head. Um, Again, I would just say to be very strong in thanking for your child because they need that. They need some strength because they are going to lack that for themselves, especially in the beginning. Again, I think it's really important to just take one step of that ladder at a time. It's
Mm,
not going to be a big picture. You cannot envision what it's going to be in just a year from what you're going through right now.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's an illusion for anybody who's been a parent. It's an illusion that you can predict the future for any kid, regardless of their level of ability. You learn that pretty fast when you have kids.
Yeah, and I think like that's the thing is moms carry that weight even if you don't have a handicapped child. I think that parents, I'm going to strictly say mothers, carry a heavy burden whenever they have this envision of what life can be or what life should look like or um again, I just think that it's taking a step back and just really focusing on that part that you're going through, rather it be a diagnosis, rather it be a doctor's appointment, rather it be a sickness that child's having at that time, just really being strong in that moment and really diving deep into your head and saying, what is all the information that I need to gain right now, and doing that. So
Yeah.
that's how I do it.
I love that. Joseph, we being in charge of the grants program, you're around so many organizations that are doing good work. But before we came on air, you were saying you've got your own personal perspective from having a person in your family that had challenges. So how does that inform, what would your advice with your family growing up? Tell us a little bit about that, and then about this stage of like getting used to the fact that you're raising a kid who's different.
Yeah, so yeah, I was saying my brother Samuel was born with Charge syndrome, so he was deaf and blind. Was born with multiple holes in his heart and experienced a lot of difficulties growing up as a child. He spent a good portion of his young life in Kosair Children's Hospital, which Kosair kids used to have their name on. And it was something that, as Whitney was talking, I kind of a lot of things hit home, and a lot of things that you kind of bury as a kid, and seeing the challenges that my parents went through. It's one of those things where uh, my I watch my parents fight every single day for my brother, and every single decision that they made in life was based around helping him thrive and be successful. And it's one of those things that you really don't think about or appreciate, and it's easy to feel trapped, like Whitney was saying, by that. But growing up now, especially, I have a 5-month-old daughter, and I just know what she means to me, and it's put a lot of things in perspective. And I guess I'm rambling, but I guess my advice for parents is, um, you know, a lot of people don't recognize the sacrifices that you're making for your kids, but it's people do see it and people do notice it and appreciate it. And I have the utmost respect for you and keep plugging along.
I love that. Maybe a spontaneous question I just thought of, since both of you have that sibling perspective. Sometimes parents, in addition to their worry about all the challenges their child with a disability has, they're also worried about, like, what about the siblings? Because they have needs too, and I don't want them to feel neglected. I got an extra dose of guilt because I can't do everything. What advice would you give to parents on how they can take care of the needs of the whole family and recognize those special challenges of being a sibling?
Um, in my opinion, I think having really good communication with the child that doesn't have the disability is probably very important. I think that the child that doesn't have the disability could maybe feel a bit overshadowed in a lot of ways. Like, not that they're sidelined, but at the same time that they understand that the other child is important. I don't know how to say that correctly. It's not that they're the one that doesn't have disabilities isn't important, but I think as a sibling, you really realize how much effort your parents have to put into the other child. And I think that having communication and being able to talk openly about what that may feel like as a sibling would be
Mm,
something that I would definitely give parents advice on. I have a child as well that isn't disabled, and that's something that
mhm.
I plan to do with him is really keeping an open communication and not handicapping him in a sort. I don't want
Right.
him to feel that he has to live a handicapped life because his brother has to. I want
Yeah,
him to still be that individual, and I think that's really important to create in a home whenever you have a handicapped sibling.
I love that. And Joseph, what did you see your parents do that you thought was really good to help you? Or just looking back, again, what advice would you give to parents on the sibling question?
Yeah, I think one-on-one time is really important. Being intentional about doing things with the other child. I was very blessed growing up, and I had a grandmother who took me and traveled with me and did a lot of great a lot of great stuff. And
Mm,
so it was, it is that type of stuff is important, bonding and quality time. But it's one of those things where there's really not, as I thought about it, there's not a great answer. People deal with different challenges in life, and as the sibling of a child with special needs, that's kind of your burden. And as you grow up, not your burden, but that's one of your challenges. And as you grow up, you it builds character, and it benefits you just as much as you may feel like, as you get older, you realize all the important things that it taught you, as opposed to when you're younger, feeling left out or disadvantaged. So,
yeah, I love that. Really good advice in terms of, just, first of all, just recognition that it's a thing, good communication, that one-on-one time, all really good things. Um, for any of you, but probably Whitney, you've lived it firsthand. Especially if your kid has any kind of medical involvement, you end up having a lot of interactions with doctors, with hospitals, with diagnosis, things like that. And for a lot of parents, there's a process to kind of like find and learn how to have a voice in that. Is it okay to ask questions? Is it okay to get a second opinion? Or when something doesn't feel right, do you trust your gut? Tell us to what extent that was part of your journey, Whitney, and again, what have you learned from that? And what advice do you give to parents on, like, dealing with this whole other world of medicine?
Well, so I am definitely not scared of asking questions. I'm really good at that. And I so in my experience, before my son was even born, I had to sit in front of a table of about 12 doctors, and I had to make a decision to have a prenatal repair surgery for Elliot. And I one of the things that the doctors all 12 of those doctors told me at the end of it was how good I was at asking questions. Uh,
Mm.
I don't think any question is dumb. I think that doctors actually really appreciate it whenever you do ask questions to them because I think that that means that you're listening to them. I think sometimes they talk, in such high language or very excelled language that you don't understand that, and it is okay as a parent to ask them to dial that back, and again, so you can understand what is actually being asked or what are they talking to you about? Because sometimes it's just absolute gibberish to us. Um, I'm not gonna lie, it is, and but I would definitely say that having to be that parent before I was even a parent and I had the child in my hands, I think taught me a lot about, again, just being very forward with doctors, telling them my concerns. I'm really good at if I, again, don't understand something, I just ask them, like, can you please explain this to me more? And I think getting that second opinion or just questioning their opinion and really putting yourself forward and what you need as a parent to understand, I think is really important and very necessary whenever it comes to having a medically challenged kid or
Yeah, I love
yeah, I think I
I,
worded
I
that
love
right.
that. Yeah, I don't think
Uh,
you could ever ask enough questions, Joseph.
I was just saying the other thing. I appreciate all your insight, Whitney. The other thing that I've just noticed from my role is I would encourage a lot of parents to lean on, social workers and other people in those medical facilities that really help you navigate the different challenges, whether that's referring you to other providers or whether that's helping you navigate different, issues with insurance or financial assistance, things like that. That is a resource that I think a lot of people are not aware of that is extremely beneficial to a parent who is dealing with these really complex processes and subject matters. So,
I agree
there's,
with that.
yeah.
Because honestly, when I didn't even know of any assistance whatsoever, going through all of it. Elliot was above 2 years old before I even learned about like even Social Security. Like I didn't even know that he would be qualified as being disabled and able to qualify for things like that. Or I did learn about Kosair very early on as far as being able to help me, but even with them, I still didn't know all that they could help me with. I knew that they helped me with therapy, but I didn't understand that, again, they could help me with a piece of medical equipment, or recently even finding out that maybe they would be able to help me with the medical bill if I needed that help. You do not realize as a parent how much is out there and offered to you, and they don't tell you those things. Um, yeah, I would definitely agree with you there, as far as like using people, because that is one of the things that I still am finding a lot out as far as, again, like what is available for my child.
Jim, can I
They,
Yeah, and
add
I
they,
think
something
they
there?
don't communicate that at
absolutely.
all.
Yeah,
I'm
Chris, go
sorry,
ahead.
Whitney. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've please forgive me for not having mentioned at the beginning of at the beginning of this podcast that anyone listening, the number one takeaway is that we are here to help children in all Kentucky counties and in the 10 that surround Louisville and southern Indiana. Go to kosair.org, kosair.org. If you know of a child that is in need of help with medical bills, equipment, or therapies, your child needs the help, go to kosair.org and fill out an application for our financial assistance program. Yes, there's an application process you need to go through. Cindy Stinnett, who handles that part of our grants, she's amazing at helping people walk through that process, answer their questions. She works for Joseph, and the two of them can take you step by step through the process. Not everyone is approved. Nearly everyone is approved, I think, is a fair way of describing how the process works. We have $1 million that we want to spend in the financial assistance program every year. And our boss, Barry Dunn, our president and CEO, often says he wants to get to the point where we're over budget and he's got to go back to the board and say, we need more money to do this. More kids need help. And so I should have said that at the beginning, and I'll say it again for those of you who are listening to this podcast so you don't have to hit pause. kosair.org. At the top of the website, you'll see a thing that says Get Help Now. And right below that says Financial Assistance Application. Apply there. Equipment, therapies, medical bills, we're the safety net. Lean on us, please.
Yeah, I love
That
that.
is
Thank
true.
you.
They are a safety net whenever it comes to parents.
Yeah,
You know,
thank you, Chris. And I think making use of resources is so key. Want to switch to talking about setting the bar, but first we're going to take a really short break. When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 14 years of experience to help his clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502 803 5075. And now back to the show. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about setting the bar. You know, that's kind of challenging for any parent. You've got the helicopter parent, you've got the throw them in the deep end and they'll figure it out parent. And then you add in a layer of a kid's got extra challenges. And Chris, I know we were talking before the show that you've had the privilege of having a front row seat to a lot of kids checking off things that they were told they would never be able to do, and their parents seeing them beat expectations. So talk to a little bit of what you've seen, and also advice to parents about like how you can set expectations for a kid who's got different challenges.
One of the wonderful things about our role at Kosair for Kids is creating a community where all families can come and be accepted. We have special events that some of them come to, the holiday party, night at Boo at the Zoo where we rent out the zoo, other special experiences for children who are facing unique hurdles. And these families come together and they meet each other, and many of them form lifelong friendships, because who better to know what path you're walking than someone who is undergoing a similar path? And so that's one of the wonderful things that we experience, is meeting some of the families, getting to know people like Whitney and other Kosair kid parents, and seeing the resiliency and being inspired by the work that they do to advocate for their children and ask the questions and advocate for other children. We have a little boy who is also a patient at the Pediatric Neuro Recovery Center, a place where Whitney's son Elliot goes, a place where Dr. Andrew Behrman is helping children with spinal cord injuries to regain movement. Elliot was told, "You'll never put pressure on your legs." I saw him walk at our pie auction in November, just before he turned 3. I get misty-eyed talking about it. I'm going to try not to get emotional telling you about it. But we have a little boy named Luke who's also a patient there. His family was told he would never feed himself. He would never feed himself. Your child is just never going to feed himself, never be able to use his arms or his legs. The first time I met Luke, he was about 3 years old, and he was racing around in a walker at Bowman Fest after his dad had just run the 5K, and he was tagging along, chasing around airplanes, wanting to look at them. That little boy joined a swim team last summer. I met a woman named Sarah. Her little girl, Lydia, was facing all sorts of hurdles. Sarah was a single mom who had 2 little girls, was working, had insurance, doing everything right. Little Lydia was facing brain surgery, had other issues revolving around some epilepsy and an issue that had happened at birth with some brain damage. She needed a cranial remolding helmet so that her child's skull would form properly, so that her brain would form properly, so that she would have less hurdles to face. But her insurance company denied the $1,600 helmet, saying that it was cosmetic. Fortunately, her orthopedic therapist knew about Kosair for Kids. She applied for that financial assistance program. And 2 years ago, little Lydia got her helmet. Last summer, I watched Lydia toddling around at our Kosair Kids Princess Tea. I saw her at a commercial shoot we did in the summer as well. And when she walks up to you, she says, "What you doing, buddy? What you doing, buddy?" And that's her catchphrase. "What you doing, buddy? What you doing, buddy?" And to think about what would have happened had Sarah not heard about us and not been able to apply for the financial assistance program. We meet families like that all the time, and it just makes you want to work harder, makes you want to spend a little more time in the office, makes you want to make more phone calls. It makes our development team, led by Beth Denham, want to do more work to raise more money to help more kids. And so, again, kosair.org, go to it. If you're listening to this and if you're a means you want to donate, yes, we have a place to donate. But if you're listening to this because you're a family of a child who's facing hurdles, go to kosair.org. And if we can help you out, we're going to try to help you out. We also help out about 100 organizations a year through our grants. We grant anywhere between $10 and $14 million a year through our board grants and our advisory council grants to organizations that do a lot of the work that we used to do when we were a hospital. Organizations that are working to end child abuse and neglect, doing the kinds of things, doing the jobs that none of us want to have to admit are needed. We fund the pediatric forensic pediatricians at UK and U of L. We've done that for about 10 or 12 years. We are the leaders behind the Face It movement to end child abuse and neglect in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Started with 10 people in a room saying we're going to end child abuse and neglect. And now we have nearly 200 partners that are working to do that every day. We have people who are undertaking on groundbreaking medical research, things like the Pediatric Nerve Recovery Center. We have had people who have used our grants in the past to create vaccines that have now saved millions of lives. Dr. Penny Heaton created a vaccine that immediately saved about 500,000 children on another continent. And that vaccine is used around the world today. So millions of lives have been impacted by the work that have been done by the people who were working here before Joseph and I got here, and before the people that we followed worked here. And so I'm just grateful to be a part of this, a small part of this, and be able to connect with people like Whitney and the moms and the dads who really inspire us to continue working every day.
And Whitney, I wanted to ask you in this topic of setting the bar. Probably Elliot has been your greatest teacher of never underestimating what's possible.
Yeah.
What's that been like for you? And then what message would you have to, again, those parents who may be a little overwhelmed with what their kid can't do and maybe sometimes not looking about what's possible?
I don't know if I could ever calm the nerves of like a mother hearing that, and that's all that they can think of is like that's not going to happen. But that goes back to that ladder and taking each step and not really thinking too hard about it. But I would say that yes, I mean, being told that as a parent and realizing that reali realizing that your kid can overcome those challenges. Can we please stop? I'm sorry, guys.
That's Dallas,
I'm
by the
very
way.
sorry.
That's Elliot's little brother.
I'm really sorry
He's
about
a
that.
fun guy.
Never
And
apologize.
it distracted me really bad from answering that properly. But what I would say is that um, being told that from the very beginning that your son isn't going to walk, he's not going to put pressure on his leg, that he's going to basically not really have a very successful life whenever it comes to his ability to do things. And seeing every year change so significantly from one year to the next has been such a blessing, and also just rewarding, giving like a lot of trust to yourself again to like listen to your gut and pushing. I would definitely tell anybody that's in this situation to push for therapy, for do as much as you can for your child in every way, shape, and form. And I think that each day you're going to just be more and more surprised by what your child can do. And even if you don't have therapy in your back pocket, you working with your child, giving them everything that you can every day is going to just be such a blessing and light to what their development can be. But yeah, I mean, I think that that would be my answer. It's
I
just,
love it.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So,
Yeah.
Chris, I know you've told us many times, but if folks are hearing this and they want to learn a little bit more about you guys, where do they go and what are some of your biggest needs for the community?
Kosair.org, Kosair.org. Go at the top of the screen where it says Get Help Now. Check on the financial assistance program. You can also find my email address there. You'll find just about every staff member that you can track down there if you need to. You can donate there. I'll let Joseph answer more of that, but I do know one of the things we hear a lot about in our community is autism. And one of our partners, the Bluegrass Center for Autism, they operate on a couple of our campuses The property that was the original Kosair Crippled Children Hospital at 982 Eastern Parkway is still the offices where Joseph and I work. And we also have several nonprofit organizations that work here that use our property as part of their granting process, and it allows them to see more children. The Kids Center for Pediatric Therapy, somebody that you're very familiar with, Jim, they're here. Bluegrass Center for Autism is on a building on this property as well as on the east end of Jefferson County. We have a building in Shelby County that houses several nonprofits as well. But I know that autism, families who are facing an autism diagnosis or they suspect that their child may earn some kind of an autism designation, it takes 2 years in a lot of cases to get that diagnosis and to get the therapies that your child needs through your insurance. And so I know that that's something big that we deal with every day. Joseph, am I understating that? Am I overstating that?
No, I think you have accurately stated that. It is a huge issue, and it's something that we've looked into quite a bit on trying to expedite that, or trying to see where our part is in expediting that process. Kind of piggybacking off that, I think therapy universally is something that is there's a significant need for, especially in the Louisville metro area, whether that's ABA therapy to serve to provide services to children with autism, or that's just speech, OT, PT, affordable therapy. I would say there's so many providers that are now going to a private pay model, and unfortunately, where when you live in a community like ours, where so many kids are reliant on Medicaid, the reimbursement rates don't cover the cost of these providers, and so I understand why it's not an attractive business option to get into, but we stand ready to help make up that difference, and we recognize the need and are happy to support those different organizations. And as far as what Kosair for Kids needs, Chris said, we need you to send kids our way that need help. We can't help them if we're not aware that that they need help. So
I love that. Well, I am so appreciative of you guys coming on, Whitney, especially sharing your insights on your personal path, and you guys talking about the work of the organization. Obviously, the passion that you have for it comes through. I'll thank you guys myself as a parent of a Kosair kid. Most of my listeners know Sophie is now almost 26, but she was a pound and a half, 26-week preemie when she was born, and definitely is a Kosair kid herself in terms of all the intervention she got at the early years. So I can't thank you guys enough for what you do every day.
Jim, just this time, and getting a chance to spotlight amazing parents like Whitney, her husband Alec, and her two boys, Dallas and Elliot. We're grateful for it. We're grateful for people to go to kosair.org, kosair.org, and to learn more about what we're doing. Joseph and I are here to answer questions as well as help you out in any way that we possibly can. But thank you for this important podcast and reaching a population that a lot of times, I can tell you, outside of what we do, feels forgotten. They feel overlooked. They want to take their kid to Boo at the zoo, or they want to take their kid to an event, and sometimes it's difficult when your child needs some specific. Your child is going to behave a little differently when they're facing different hurdles, and so we provide opportunities for them to be around an appreciative community, a kind community. So you giving them an opportunity to hear and learn things and to know that there's kindness out there we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And if you're listening, we want to hear stories about other nonprofits that you've had impact your life around the country. We also want parents like Whitney and others to tell their stories. We're still doing about 2 episodes a month. One of those is somebody who's traveling this path, an individual, a family, a grandparent, maybe an adult who grew up with a disability and wants to talk about that path. And then the second episode is the nonprofit spotlight. So send me your ideas. Don't keep this podcast a secret. Share this episode with other folks. Go to our Facebook page with the Seeing Ability. My website is pretty easy, seeingability.com, and you can find the podcast there. Help us get the word out. My goal with this podcast is it provides education. I'm sure you guys learned something today. Motivation. We all need that little burst of inspiration. And then it becomes another layer of the village for families. Listening to this podcast, you feel recognized, understood. So help us get the word out to other people. Folks, thanks so much for being here. Everybody, we'll see you next time.